Hello, thank you for watching my thoughts on the debate. Well, it's a summary, more than just my thoughts on it. Kent Hovind debated Jackson Wheat. Kent Hovind believes the Bible is true, that there was a rapid creation, and certain things like symbiotic animal and plant relationships prove or require a rapid creation. The Grand Canyon is a washed out spillway from a dam that got, a natural dam that the water came over the top of and washed it out. And Kent Hovind has modeled how that probably happened on his property where there was a dam that they had built so they could repair another dam further down. And then when the dam further down was done being strengthened or rebuilt, they encouraged the other dam to fail by digging out just enough of it so the water would start to go over the top. And once that water started to go over the top, you could see it very quickly washed out the dam. Jackson Wheat had his turn, and he said analogies obfuscate the issue. No, they don't. Analogies are a good teaching tool. Sometimes it's a good way to get a point across. He claimed that DNA in humans proves or is traced back to 100,000 years. There was no bottleneck with only 8 people, but how would you know if there was a bottleneck? I'm skeptical that Jackson Wheat and those who agree with him really have a good scientific method to find bottlenecks. No index fossils. He said there would if there was a Noah's flood happened the way Kent believes it did, or the way the Bible says, that there would be no index fossils. No, actually, if there was a worldwide flood right now, animals and trees would be sorted by density. So, yeah, there would be index fossils because all of the things of a certain density will be in the same layers, mixed up together. And when you're talking about the whole world being flooded, there probably was not a pure mixing of everything. When we mix a cake in a small bowl, it's a small bowl. Everything gets mixed around. But something the size of this world, there might be clusters of animals that live together far apart from other animals that would not end up buried together. Like if there's a worldwide flood tomorrow, I don't think the mountain goats from Alaska would get buried with the... What's one of the animals that lives only in the southern parts of South America? If there's an animal that lives only in the southern parts of South America, there's that one rabbit thing that's lives in Patagonia. But they wouldn't end up mixed together probably. So there would be index fossils. Let's see, geology doesn't work. Jackson Wheat used an ad hominem attack in pointing out that Answers in Genesis doesn't want anything to do with Kent Hovind. So what? That doesn't prove anything other than Answers in Genesis doesn't want anything to do with Kent Hovind. This is a debate where you have time to explain things. Why waste time with ad hominem attacks like that? Jackson Wheat wants proof that animals aren't fossilizing today. Really? This kid must live in a high-rise tower in the middle of a city. If you live in suburbs, you see roadkill. Roadkill doesn't fossilize. It's just such an obvious scientific fact. It doesn't need proof. It's proven by the fact that if you live in the real world, you will see roadkill rotting. Yeah. Jackson Wheat claims he's explained how symbiotic relationships happen, how the flowers that need the bees now didn't need the bees in the past, and they were spreading the pollen without the bees. Hello? Yeah, you called in the middle of something. Is this important? Okay, have a good day. Ow, the telemarketer actually said no, it's not important. Alrighty. Jackson Wheat claimed there was no proof of writing older than what Kent Hovind says. But one of Kent Hovind's points about the proofing the age of things, because this was supposed to be a debate about Noah's flood, did it happen? Is the oldest writings that we have don't go way past the flood. They match up well. Jackson claims there's writings we have that go like 2,000 years past Noah's flood. Still, there could be some human error involved in a little bit of difference like that. Or some younger, or many generations of younger births than we have now, or something like that, that would alter the time of things a little bit. Kent Hovind's had his turn again, and he said nobody sees nothing become things. So there has to be a creator. He explained well his theory about the Grand Canyon, which is Kent Hovind's got a very plausible theory about the Grand Canyon. Kent Hovind metaphorically hit out of the park Jackson Wheat's weak argument about there is volcanic ash, there are layers of volcanic ash that proves that there wasn't a flood. No, the fountains of the great deep woke up. Well, Jackson Wheat did disprove something with that. He disproved the cute little picture book for 3-year-old version of the flood. He did disprove that, but he did not disprove what the Bible actually says, because the Bible doesn't say there was a bunch of rain only. No, it says the fountains of the deep broke up. So there was water coming from underneath the earth, shooting up. That was part of the flood. With all of that going on, of course there could be volcanoes. Jackson claimed that the ash was air ash, that it wasn't in water. How do you prove that? I'm skeptical that you can know if ash was shot up into the air and then settled down, as opposed to shot up into the middle of a worldwide flood and settled down. Let's see. One proof that the fish were covered rapidly is there are fossilized fish that are, what's the wording? They're opening their gills to try to get air right before they die. Because the way fish get more air is to open their gills up a little more to get more water flowing through. Kent's answer to paleomagnetism, or the supposed pole shifts that have happened, is declining magnetic fields and stronger and weaker magnetism. Kent Hovind explains the Pangea as lower water levels before the flood, and maybe he's right about that. Between the different continents and islands and things, there are land bridges that are 100 feet, sometimes less than 100 feet deep. And so those land bridges could explain how all the continents could be connected without dramatic change in the shape of the Earth. Although maybe the Pangea is right. I'm not convinced by Kent to completely disbelieve the Pangea theory. Kent Hovind pointed out the Chinese calendar goes back to about 4,300 years. It matches perfectly with the biblical timeline of the flood. The Chinese calendar and their ancient Chinese ancient mythology has a man named Yu who survived the flood, a worldwide flood, who had 3 sons. It matches perfectly with the Bible. Kent Hovind pointed out that mammoths probably were not a cold weather animal because they lack certain glands that would help a cold weather animal. Maybe he's right about that. Kenneth Wheat claimed that Grand Canyon could be explained by erosion. Wow. No, it can't, because the Kaibab uplift, the river, Grand Canyon River, the Colorado River, which is in the canyon, goes through. It's called the Kaibab uplift because it's an uplift. It's erosion can't explain that. And yeah, so the Grand Canyon airborne ash. He had a bad job of explaining airborne ash. Jackson Wheat did admit cows produce cows. And eukaryotes. He likes the word you use, eukaryotes. Eukaryotes produced eukaryotes. No, eukaryotes is too broad of a definition. The word has too broad of a meaning for it to be useful in saying that. I give you permission, if any of you are ever at a zoo with me and you don't know a language that I know and I'm teaching you the names of the animals in that language, I give you permission to slap me silly if I say, that's a eukaryote, that's a eukaryote, that's a eukaryote, that's a eukaryote, or the equivalent in that language. Now, if it's a language I'm not fluent in, and I say, I don't know the name for that one in that language, that's different than me saying, eukaryote, 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 or eukaryote in whatever language I know. One of the questions that was asked to Kent was, why does he believe the Bible and not other gods or other stories of God or beliefs about God? I think the questioner specifically brought up Islam, but Kent Hovind said he does not want to believe Islam. Well, he doesn't believe Islam because of scientific mistakes in the Quran. He specifically named some, like the sun setting in a murky pool of water. The Quran says that. And there's a hadith where you would get a chance to, or Muhammad got a chance to, if that was just a metaphor, or if the Quran was saying that because it looks like that, but that's not the way it is, because Muhammad got a chance to say that to somebody in a hadith, and the hadith says Muhammad said the same thing. He doubled down on it. Let's see. Now, Kent Hovind, he does not try hard to accurately understand other religions, and here's another example of that. Nowhere in the Quran does it say that a child will look more like the parent who climaxed first. Ejaculated first. Who climaxed first. And that's not in the Quran anywhere. It is in hadith that I have not been able to double check because the hadith are so enormous. But the people who have quoted that hadith I fact check them every time they quote the Quran, because the Quran is smaller, so it's easier to fact check them. And they are correct every time when they claim the Quran says something, or when they're quoting the Quran. So I think I've got that reason to believe that they're right, because I have fact-checked them on the other thing, on what's in the other book. So Kent Hovind was right and wrong about that, but he shouldn't be so lazy as to not know the difference between the Quran and the Hadith. It's not that hard to understand the difference. And remember, remember which things are in the Quran and which things are in the Hadith. Let's see. Somebody made hay about Kent Hovind stopped using one of his slides in his presentation. One of Kent Hovind's presentation includes slides where he points out when carbon-14 dating has claimed something that was alive or we know recently died is thousands of years old, which disproves that technique. If you carbon date something that's alive or recently killed, and you get thousands of years old, that proves there's some problem, unreliability with that dating method. Well, Kent Hovind used to say there was one mammoth that they dated twice. They cut 2 parts of the mammoth off, 2 samples from the mammoth, and these 2 samples from the mammoth dated thousands of years apart in age. Kent said he doesn't use that anymore, not because he thinks that it's wrong, but some people are claiming that it was actually 2 different mammoths, and he's got other slides that prove the same point, so he's not going to use that questionable slide. Kent Hovind pointed out you can't use strata for dating because of polystrata fossils. And Jackson Wheat had a little bit more to say. He questions whether there's 3 mitochondrial DNA. He claimed that Native Americans have been on America since 12,000 years, and Australian natives were there for 65,000 years. I'm skeptical of those historical sciences. Everybody should be. How can we be certain about some things about the past? A lot of evidence is rot, and sometimes dating methods or these estimates of years are based on unproven or unprovable, depending on which tribe or continent you're talking about, unproven or unprovable or questionable assumptions. Jackson Wheat claims mitochondria was its own separate cell in the past, but with no proof of that. If that's its own cell in the past, we have some mitochondrial today that's outside of a cell that's living, that would be good proof of that, but he didn't claim that that's been found. He claims that symbiotic relationships don't prove what Kent claims they prove, but he didn't explain how the termites that cannot process the wood that they eat but survive because the microbes inside of the termites, which are their own species, which are their own animal, actually break down the wood for the termite. He never explained how these termites survive thousands of years or millions of years without being able to eat. How did they not starve to death when they could not digest the food they were eating before they got these helpful bacteria? So thank you for watching my comments on a debate where Kent Hovind was a little bit under the weather. You could tell by his voice in this debate. So it wasn't his best debate, and he strayed a little bit from the main topic of the debate, the flood, but still, while not a resounding, crushing metaphorical victory, Kent Hovind did win this debate too. You have a good day.